Welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show where we always make complete sense.
A bird may love a fish, signore, but where would they live?
I hope everyone out there is having a fantastic Friday and you got yourself a great weekend on deck here to take advantage of hopefully what is going to be a start of a wonderful summer as we're rolling through here and along. We're rolling along through here this off season, getting closer and closer here to training camp. And today we're going to have a little bit of a fun show. I know I always say this quick show, as will be a quick show in and out today, but a bit of a fun show, I think, because we always love to be in the place of dreaming and dreaming big and dreaming of the potentialities that could occur. You know, the one extra move, the two extra moves, the take you over the top kind of deal where you just go, wait, what, we're going to get that on top of this? I'll always remember 10 years ago when the Seattle Seahawks were primed and ready to roll for that 2023 season, coming off 2012. Everything was set. The stage was ready to roll. Your players were coming off that 2012 where everything had really gone well at the end. You just got into Atlanta and barely couldn't get out of there with a win on the road. It wasn't quite the right time, but you knew they were coming back hungry and ready to roll. And then you added a Percy Harvin on top of it. Now, I understand a Percy Harvin didn't necessarily work out as a smashing success. You could say that kick return touchdown in the Super Bowl helped to put that game away thoroughly and to ensure the championship. He had a couple of games that year he did play in where he was able to provide some impact and help to the team as well. Saints playoff game and the Minnesota Viking game he had. But it's obviously not a success story. Still, I think that the thought process from John Schneider to try and attempt to take the team up over the top is a good impelled feeling to go off of as a general manager. I think sometimes you go with a lot of GMs that they feel like the hay is in the barn, they've done their work in the offseason with free agency and the draft. And now you get to the times of this sort of time of year and, you know, there's nothing left to do. You don't feel really a need to have to go and you're going to let the cards fall where they may and, you know, trust the process and hope it can go. Where John, I think that he has shown a willingness in recent history to be a little bit more aggressive in this note because I think he, and I agree with this, tends to look at these times of years, whether it is right now before training camp, whether it's in the midst of training camp, or whether it's right before the trade deadline, as a time to where he can go get an asset for depressed value. That he doesn't have to pay prime store prices at that point. It's like outlet shopping a little bit, and from his perspective. Now, it hasn't always worked out this way. Like we said, you know, the Percy Harvin trade was costly, and you spent a lot of money on it. Jamal Adams was costly, and you ended up spending a lot of money on it. So there is also a possibility here that John looks at it as a situation that this hasn't bore out a lot of fruit. But if you take Seattle's situation absent that and remove that part of it and look at other teams that have kind of taken some of these steps, there's some success to be had there, and that it doesn't have to always be a fail point. And you don't want to just go off of a couple of instances of it not necessarily working out to the ultimate degree as a reason not to do it. And what does stand out right now is that your Seahawks, as I've spoken about, are sitting on about $31 million of cap space. More than that, even though, when you consider the potential of a Fant move, which could clear another $8.5 million off the books and getting you near $40 million, which would have you up there as much as almost anybody in the NFL as far as cap space as we go into the upcoming season. Certainly up in the top rung of the list of teams at that point. So you're making this potential trade not only on the back of the fact that you'd be looking to kind of take the team up over the top and get them that another difference maker into the ranks, but you also have the cap space to be able to pull this off. You are sitting in a position at this point with that money that you never had this amount of cap space that I can remember going back years and years following this team. It seems like every time we were arriving at this time of year, if anything, John's trying to scramble and turn base to bonus on contracts in order to just have enough money to work with to be able to go do his normal order of business. So this is why I'm kind of pushing as hard on this show for this to be a potentiality that they look to engage. There's 3 different time periods that you could look for John to jump here. So it doesn't have to be today. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. It doesn't have to be at the start of training camp. We saw last year that you brought in Connor Williams as you're already deep into training camp. We have Jadeveon Clowney. You were already well deep into training camp by the time you brought Jadeveon Clowney in there. Jamal Adams. We can go through the litany of list of guys that we've done this with, but it doesn't have to be in a certain timetable of it. It's sort of between now and the trade deadline. And we're going to go through the options. I'm going to make my case on some guys, but then I'm going to give you guys really where I think the team would be smartest at the end of this to probably land of sort of those, call it the 2 different territories, before the start of the year and before the trade deadline, which is the smarter move to be made. I think the other thing that has to inform you a little bit in this situation is your quarterback situation, because you're obviously not going to be looking to move a lot of extra assets into next year's draft if you are going to need to potentially go get a quarterback, if you're going to need those same assets to package them together to go get up your quarterback of the future next year. But with signing Sam Darnold to the multi-year deal, with Drew Lock on a 2-year deal, with the drafting of Jalen Milroe, I think that this does kind of pull the quarterback position off the board for the Hawks, most likely into next year's draft. And if that's the case, maybe then you're a little bit more freed up to go and make some moves like this, to be a little bit more aggressive, because those picks don't have to be as prized, especially on a football team right now that is starting to stack the talent up, where there is less of the holes, less of the needs, less of having to have every one of your picks into next year's draft all kind of hit for you to be able to take a next step. You could probably almost just take that next step absent that draft by how you've kind of built this up slow and surely, and with how much young talent is brimming, I say, over the top of the glass here on this team as it stands right now. So let's look at the options. Let's look at a couple of guys, and we're going to do this in 2 different kind of parts. First, I'm going to look at the frontline guys the names names that are being kind of bandied about a little bit, and we're going to look at them. Then I'm going to try to look a little bit more creatively at those players that could become available. And this would be more of to the eye with the trade deadline, and that's where you would be looking. So we'll look at kind of both of these. And to start out, let's go with the name everybody knows, Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson. Currently right now with the negotiations with the Bengals, 5 days ago, there was some optimism in Cincinnati land because they were going to restart negotiations back up as they had gone quiet. And Hendrickson was pretty pissed. And it seemed like this thing was just going to drift and change and he wasn't going to be able to be signed. Then we hear 2 days ago that there's really no progress being made on the contract. It comes down to right now the Bengals want to do this on a short-term deal. Trey wants to get a long-term deal at 31, 32 years old. And so they are at a bit of an impasse as it stands right now. The Bengals were trying to get a first-round pick for Hendrickson at the draft, which is silly. You're not, for a guy that age who you got to spend that amount of money on a longer-term contract, are you going to be able to get that return back? We saw this a little bit with DK Metcalf, where you got a late second-round pick back for DK Metcalf. He should have been worth more, but the Steelers had to give him a 5-year, $30 million per average deal, and that mean that was going to lower the price. So the Bengals have to make a little bit of their peace here with the fact that they're not going to get the prime returns back for Hendrickson, and then they got to accept what they can get back for him. And we'll see if they eventually make their peace on that. And they're having another problem with another edge there in Shamar Stewart, rookie first-round pick that they have also kind of pissed off. So the Bengals are going to bangle it. The Bengals are going to bungle it. You can pretty much count on that. And maybe this is a situation for the Seahawks to jump into if he does become available. The draft pick compensation absolutely is going to reduce down to bare minimum second-round pick. It might go down even further beyond that with how late the hour is and how few teams can go and make the move for Hendrickson at this point and then give him the big contract. That's the key. A lot of teams can go and give the assets up for him, but he wants the new deal in addition to that, and that doesn't then leave as many teams out there that can go jump into this fray. So could you eventually see a situation where it's a third or two-thirds, like third-round pick this year, third-round pick next year, and then you can bring in Hendrickson, or you can move a third-round pick and probably one of your glut of edges. Because I'm okay with holding on to these guys. I'm not looking to move Hall or Mafe, but Mafe is in a contract here. You are going to have to decide after the season what you're going to do with him. I don't know if he's, in the team's eyes, quite earned being paid like a $20 million year deal. And so this is a place where you may look at it being able to kind of improve and upgrade the position. Albeit with a little bit of an older player, though Mbappe for himself is not a super young guy. He's going to be getting up there because he's a bit of an older prospect. So this would be a chance for you to upgrade it, and maybe you could use one of those assets, one of those glut of hedges, to once again lower down that draft capital cost and mitigate some of that, and so that it makes it to where it's really just the cost of the deal itself is where you feel the pain. And when you are sitting on the amount of cap space they are sitting on, you could theoretically be able to ingest that. Swallow that's not going to be something that's going to throw your cap situation into hell if you were to make that move. Definitely some risk here with this guy, being that the age is there, but as a pass rusher, there's been probably nobody as consistent or as good, or at least over the top as good as he has been over the last couple of years in that way. I knock him a little bit for his run defense. It's not god-awful, so it's not horrible. He gets the job done over there. Real technician for the position. Could be a guy that could fit, but part of this is also going to be the Bengals kind of making their peace eventually with the fact that they're just not going to be able to hold him over the barrel, force him to play on the old contract, and that they're just going to roll that way. But the Bengals are weird. They go about it their own kind of way. Carson Palmer once went through all this, and he had to wait very, very long to be traded. They don't like to move their guys, even when they want out of town. So you just have to keep an eye on it. But Hendrickson is definitely a possibility of being in play, and you can see how Seattle could make this move where they go, look, we have really good edges all around. We're 4 deep, very strong, very good edges. We can rotate. We can keep these guys fresh. But do we have difference makers right now? Do we have guys off the edge that offenses have to account for? And I don't know that right now you have that exactly. Solid players, but you could be improved with a guy like Hendrickson and what he can bring on his side of it. Another guy to keep an eye on here, and a guy that is definitely on some of these. I'm going to hear a comment section, and I understand it going, there's no chance we're going to get that guy. That's just not ever going to. But I would offer to the folks that do kind of get that initial retraction at seeing some of the names I'm going to post or some of the possibilities here with this. I've been at this game for many years now, and I can't tell how many conversations I've gotten into with people where I mention a name like this and am told, there's no way, you're in crazy bound. That's just impossible. Come on, get in real. And then it happens. So, where we might be standing on one player right now might look a certain way to you and be absolutely proof positive. This is the way the situation is going to play out. The NFL is very fluid and ever changing. And when it comes to contract negotiations, you never quite know when that thing's going to T-bone in the middle of the highway. You don't. It can go sideways really quickly, especially when you're dealing with organizations who, for instance, have been maybe just a little bit cheap when it comes to some of their players, like the Bengals, obviously, and the Cowboys kind of low-key kind of cheap with the Cowboys. They, at times, have rewarded their players and been willing to do it. At other times, they're making their guys wait like they did with Dak Prescott, like they did with CeeDee Lamb all the way into the depth of training camp last year before they finally paid him. And now they're in the midst of the same here with Micah Parsons. Now, they seem to be on some common ground, relatively speaking, but let's also understand that with this Cowboy team that, they're not a catch-rich organization. They're not a team that's going to bury void years down the line. They're going to probably be thinking a little bit about what they're going to be intending to maybe do with Pickens here down the line at the receiver position. I think that chances are good that they're going to sign a Parsons, but there is also the part of this where they go, look, the price is going to be too high for how we're kind of trying to put this team together and how we're trying to drive this thing. And then he eventually, says, look, you're not going to give me the money I want to get paid. That could be the other part of it. Send me to where I am going to get paid. So it would be outside of the Cowboys' personality to do this and to go this route with it. But watching their negotiations recently and seeing how Parsons, even into this offseason, was really like, this thing needs to happen. I need to get paid. And with the Cowboys, they do have a bit of that tendency with this too, to just push these things out and try to go to longer contracts. I don't know if you guys remember the Tyron Smith contract they signed to him, Tyron Smith. It was a 10-year deal, which nobody's doing those kind of deals. So this is also what's kind of maybe causing a little bit of the issues here on getting the Parsons deal done, is that he's not wanting that 6-year deal. He wants to get the 4-year deal, come back in a couple of years and re-up, go back to the well once again. That's what these players want to do, is get as many of those turns as they can on that contract. So something to keep in mind there with Parsons. He's going to cost significantly more than Trey Hendrickson. They're both going to be in the general territory of things, but because he's younger and you've got more of that time there that you can count on, he's definitely going to be up there in a huge price. But there's no denying that this guy does give you the difference maker off the edge. You have the familiarity with Alan Dirty. If he does pop up and become available on that side of it, I think it makes a lot of sense. The cost is going to be through the roof if you do this, where it would be probably likely to be 2 first-round picks. Now, again, we come back to, can you augment this a little bit? Can you take a Boye Mafe or Derek Hall and put them together in a package along with the picks, and thus maybe lower down the draft pick cost at that point to make it happen? I think you very well could, but the cost is still going to be significant when it comes to Parsons. That the only way for them to validate getting this deal done would be they get the player in return, but then they're getting the draft capital assets to where they can sell their franchise on it. The one place I'm wondering about this maybe making some sense is that maybe there's a part of Jerry with this deal and Dak going, Dak's not the good guy long term. Yeah, we signed him another deal. Yeah, we did that. I know we did that. But that was wrong. That was wrong of us. America's team's going to make mistakes, but we fix our mistakes in America. That's what we do. America's team fixes its mistakes. So he's maybe looking a little bit early on here into the future of next year's draft, looking at maybe some of those quarterbacks, maybe a guy like an Arch with the potentiality of him maybe coming out. If Jerry can be sitting on multiple first-round picks, if he can be sitting on an assembly of picks and have the opportunity to then go and get that, really great, talented quarterback. Let's remember with Jerry, he had Troy Aikman when they first walked in there, number 1 overall pick, hyper-talented quarterback, future Hall of Famer. But since then, what have they had? They've kind of run through. So Tony Romo was good. He had a good career. I'll give you that. And Dak's had a good career. But is there a little bit of a difference between an Aikman to a Romo to a Dak? I think there kind of is. So a little driver of what could be on this situation is Jerry looking at the upcoming year going, we're not going to contend this year. We're going to be good. America's team's always good, but we're not going to be great. We need to be great. Maybe he starts to think a little bit of trying to, buff up those assets for up next year's draft, be able to package, be able to go get a player, go get one of those really talented quarterbacks. I think that's going to be out in next year's draft, be it Aller, be it Arch, be it Klubnik, or be it even beyond that. I think we're going to have a good draft class next year. But this is a deal to keep an eye on to see what they do and if the negotiations potentially do kind of break down just a little bit. Just a little bit. I'm not going to let him go. I love me my Micah. Micah's my love. I love my edge. He's my favorite edge. I like him more than DeMarcus Ware. Okay? We ain't going to let him go. You better give us something good if we're going to let him go. Okay, maybe we'll let him go. That's a lot of money. A lot of money paying edge. He ain't LT. I watched LT. My Cowboys played LT. He's no LT. Now, we'll see with him. We'll see how it goes, but I think this is one that could turn the worm on this one, so keep an eye on it. Just keep a little side eye on this one. You never know if the negotiations were to quasi breakdown, and there are some connections here with Dirty and him. Of course, him and DeMarcus Lawrence need to make up, get back to right. Next guy up on the list here of guys that we kind of know quasi aren't on the market, but very well could kind of be posting up on the market here before training camp if things turn a little bit sideways. The Jaylen Ramsey saga turns on and continues. There's a lot of back and forth on this one. I feel like the Dolphins essentially are just a little bit kind of embittered by the fact that they just signed him to a contract extension and now he's kind of trying to shuffle his way out of town. And that's a hard look for a player. And I think if I was a team, I would be kind of annoyed with that kind of thing too, where it's like, pay me. You got to pay me. You got to give me money. You get the money in there a year or two, then they're like, oh yeah, we want out of there. It's like, nah, it doesn't work that way. You're under contract, buddy. So the Dolphins do seem to be open to this, but there's some worry about who's eating what money a little bit. Like, will the Dolphins eat a little bit more money to move him to the Rams? That's what the Rams kind of want, is the Dolphins to do that. What if there's another team like Seattle that jumps into the fray on this and says, we don't want to, we're not worried about eating that money, like wanting you to eat that money like the Rams are. We'll take on a little bit more of that contract. And then at that point, you can maybe get a deal facilitated over the top of the Rams as they are the front runner there for him. But I think that there's another situation here that's very flexible and that it's very much opening for another team to jump in there and take advantage of the Rams kind of scuttling a little bit on this one and their unwillingness to do that. The Dolphins do seem to be in a weird situation with them, that they had the mandatory minicamps, for instance, and with Jaylen Ramsey, they waived the fines on the mandatory minicamp. So in one respect, it looks like it's sort of inevitable, but they're looking to move off of him. But then we're also hearing rumors about the fact that he may sit this upcoming season, and that's also a possibility of how this could kind of play out. So it is a little bit of a weird situation there right now with what's going on with Ramsey and the Dolphins, and unsure about how they're looking to move or where they're looking to move him. The one thing I will say about this, and this is going to show when I go through some of the names that we're going to look at for the trade deadline, is that when I did the research on looking at cornerbacks and those cornerbacks that are going to be available here, not only just now, but as the season potentially goes along with the trade deadline deal for a team that falls out of contention and has a corner maybe on last year of their deal kind of situation, is there's not a lot of them. The cornerback market out there right now, as far as possible trades, is going to be very thin. There's not going to be a lot of inroads out there to be able to find solutions if your guys aren't able to go. Woolen gets an injury. Josh Jobe is not good. You're going to be in a tough situation there as far as finding competent bodies out there to fill it back in and make it run at that point. So getting a guy like Ramsey right now, or jumping on a guy like Ramsey right now, could prove to be tantalizing a little bit for the Hawks because of the fact that there is such a scarcity there on the other side of it with the rest of the position availability as it goes. And this is a position on a defense that's very stacked up and is very strong and has good corners. The depth of the position is not altogether great. And so definitely there is room there to be able to add a good quality corner. Hawks have looked at Rasul Douglas, Shaquille Griffin, but in Jaylen Ramsey, you'd get a real difference maker, a guy that could fit to this defense. Ramsey on one side, Woolen on the other, Witherspoon in the slot with Love and Kobe Bryant in your secondary and safety position, and Nick Emawari coming out as a weapon. That is the best secondary in all of football, if you were to put that together. So what's the draw there? Well, the draw is you can afford the contract, which wouldn't be super expensive because the bonus money does come off the books. The draft compensation for a guy of his age at this point is not going to be tremendous, and then he would help to turn the secondary into the best in football. I think that this deal makes a lot of sense for the Seahawks to be looking at. It's obviously going to be prerequisite upon the fact that Jaylen's going to be willing to play in Seattle, and then maybe that's the thing that could hold this whole deal up from happening. I don't want to go to Seattle. I want to go to LA. Maybe he just got his heart set on it in that way. Can't blame him. He won a championship there with the Rams. So if he wanted to go back, you could understand it. But one that I think John should definitely be kicking the tires on this one to find out what the deal is and what the cost is, and look if you can bring him in, because I think that this would be a great A addition. Timing is good. Cost isn't great, and the impact, I think it would be significant on him coming in. Last year, the Dolphins, you might look at his kind of PFF stats a little bit. The Dolphins misused him a little bit last year, trying to operate him from the slot a little bit too often to take advantage of his tackling ability. That's not where you utilize Jaylen Ramsey. He's an outside corner. He's not a slot corner. So get him back to where he's going to be at his best. And Ramsey could be a lot of fun if you were to bring him in. One that is a little bit outside of the peripheral here right now, and one that certainly is not in any place right now close to being a trade of a possibility, but one to monitor is the J.J. Watt situation. J.J. Watt with Pittsburgh is due for a new contract. He's heading into the final year of his deal there. They've not been able to get a deal done. Pittsburgh kind of has a little bit of an operating stance that's very similar at times to almost like the Bengals in their own way. Like they're not going to tear up deals. They're going to, kind of keep you on the books with where they want you. Not a cash-rich organization. They just handed out that big old contract to DK Metcalf this offseason. Do they have the money in the coffers to want to throw this big deal at JJ that he's going to want to be paid? And he's going to want to be paid a very tidy sum at this point. It's a little bit like the Micah Parsons situation where maybe the cost wouldn't be quite as great as far as draft capital compensation goes. But as far as how much he's probably going to want to be paid, it's going to be probably pretty similar in that territory. I will say the one place that he's got over Watt is that he's been a tremendously competent, capable, and consistent player when it comes to his play as both an edge pass rusher and as a run defender. So a guy that I like quite a bit in how he's played. You could worry a little bit with him that maybe the body's potentially starting to kind of get older and maybe starting to break down a little bit. He's had his share of little injuries that have popped up here over recent span of things. But TJ Watt, I've got JJ Watt in there. That's funny. TJ Watt is a guy to keep an eye on here. And looking at some of this kind of where the negotiations we're at right now, I'm going to read you this little tidbit from a story I was getting on it. In regards to TJ Watt skipping mandatory minicamp due to a contract dispute, former Steelers cornerback and Hall of Famer Rod Woodson thinks the Steelers need to change their philosophy on how they structure contracts. He thinks the approach is outdated. The Steelers, he said, when you have an existing contract, they normally tear it up and redo another contract for you. But what I would say to the Steelers is times are changing. When you have a guy like TJ Watt, you want to keep him happy because not only is he the leader on the team, on the field and off the field, but you're showing the rest of the players in the locker room how you treat your best players, especially in the history of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's one of the best players to play at the position in the history of the Steelers. I think you do something a little different. Normally, they don't tear those contracts up and redo them, but I think they should really heartily think about it. He should be one of the highest paid players at his position, if not the highest paid player at his position. J.J. Watt stated several times this offseason that the Steelers messed up by not giving his brother an extension sooner. Reward your players and reap the benefits in the long run. Dragging it out not only ends up costing more, it creates unnecessary tension. The longer you wait, the higher the price, JJ wrote on X in response to Brett Kohlerman posting that post that said dragging stuff out is the worst way to do things. Watt has not been around the team since cryptically throwing up the deuces on Instagram a few months ago. So keep an eye on the TJ Watt situation there with what's happening. We're getting closer and closer to training camp. We haven't gotten a culmination of these negotiations yet. There's once time a Steeler organization way back in the day. Let's call it almost 30 years ago now at this point. Jeez, 30 years ago. I'm getting old. We got almost 30 years ago. The Pittsburgh Steelers, same kind of ownership was in place. Same ownership. And they had a very talented edge rusher, albeit younger than where TJ is. Maybe not quite as productive, but a guy that was absolutely dynamite for them coming off the edge into the Defensive Player of the Year voting. And they let that guy go be a free agent. They let that guy go. And I think in Pittsburgh, there is a little bit of a thinking at times of, especially when it comes to the edge group, that we can just kind of keep spinning guys through. We have a great way of scouting and developing it, and we can just kind of constantly get these guys rolling through. So we don't have to necessarily pay that guy some crazy amount of money to kind of get by. And that's where I think with the JJ situation, there's definitely some room here for this thing to maybe twist and turn a different direction on that. And boy, if that one comes up, I would be all over this one myself too. He's a complete player. He is a great upgrade from what you've got there at the position. And another guy that gives you a difference-making kind of component to his game, which is what we're looking for at this stage if we're going to make a trade for a guy, in my opinion, on it. No reason to just go after a jag or a guy barely above average. Go out and try to do something significant if you're going to try to make that move at that point with this. So those are the four main guys I'm going to be taking. I'm looking at right now that we've got kind of in the scopes as a possibility in the moment as we stand. There are things that can turn with time. And that, as you guys know, with the trade deadline and it being extended a little bit deeper into the season, this gives more opportunity for teams to maybe potentially make some more moves a little bit longer in the season, to have an opportunity to really look at their team and make the assessment about whether or not they're good enough to go make that run this year. And this is where we come to what I would prefer the team to do at this point as we stand right now. If there is a TJ trade comes up or a Parsons trade comes up, I'm certainly open to that as long as you're not overpaying. But I think that the best route for the Hawks at this point is going to be a little bit more of the wait and see approach to this, being that you wait to the trade deadline. And the reason for this is you're still not quite sure exactly the team you're going to get this upcoming season. You're hopeful. You see a ton of talent on this team. There's a lot of reason to believe with their schedule that they're going to be able to make a playoff push, maybe even a divisional a run as well, maybe make some noise in the playoffs. But you probably would be best served to give your team that few games with the new offensive coordinator to see where they kind of stand, to see if you get to the trade deadline at 4-2 and are in more of a position to kind of understand, okay, we're rolling, we're going, we're ready to kind of cook this thing up and lock this thing in a little bit more. You also have a little bit, of course, at that point, more of a selection of possible players to pick through at that time than you do right now, where everything's a little bit lean on that side, save for a couple of these guys that are outliers. And so waiting also kind of allows you to kind of benefit on that side of it too. Say nothing of that when you do make the trade deadline deals, you're now only going to have to pay that player about half the season rather than the full season. So from a cap standpoint, it also makes a little bit more sense versus always having to eat the full meal deal. I went through and looked at all the teams in the NFL of the guys that would become available around the trade deadline, in my opinion, that would be maybe interesting for the Seattle Seahawks. We're going to make some educated guesses on some of this. So some of it's a little bit of a process of elimination. San Francisco 49ers, Arizona Cardinals, Los Angeles Rams, probably not trading within their own division. You're probably not trading for one of those players. So you kind of wipe them off the board as far as any potentiality there. Saints are in play. Panthers in play because I don't think either of those two teams are going to have a great year. And so you look at them as maybe a possibility. The Falcons could be, depending on how their season goes, but they're really all in this year with the first round pick on the board going to the Rams. And so they're not likely to be a team that's trading either. Buccaneers, they're not making a move. They're going to try to go for it. Bears, we're going to have to see with them because that's a team that you don't quite know what you're going to get from them this upcoming year. Packers should be good. Vikings should be good. Lions should be pretty good. We're anticipating there. So unless something really twists with any of those three teams, you're probably not going to be able to do a trade deadline deal with them. Giants are absolutely in play. You would expect them, to have some guys that you might be able to, pilfer from as a mid-season trade deadline. Cowboys, I think, would be in the same kind of place. That's not an easy division. Cowboys are hoping they can be good, but if they get to the trade deadline and they're not good, maybe a team you can look at there. I think the Commanders are going to be pretty good this year, and I think the Eagles are obviously going to be pretty good. Raiders are a team to track. Broncos are a team to track because you don't know if they're going to be able to replicate what they did last year, and the AFC West is going to be tremendously tough. So a couple of those teams are probably going to fall off a little bit. And I could see the Broncos, as much as everybody's kind of hyping them up, I could see that being a team that actually ends up taking a little bit of a minor step back this upcoming season. Not bad, but a minor step back, and maybe not good at the trade deadline, so a team to look at. Chargers are going to be good this year. Chiefs are going to be good this year. I don't see you having an opportunity to make a trade with them. Titans, Jaguars, Colts, all in play. Colts are hoping they can be good, but we'll see with Anthony Richardson on that one. Texans are off the board for me. Cleveland in play. Cincinnati, hard to tell, but I'd say out of play because they just don't make a lot of trades in general. Steelers are in it. Baltimore's in it. Buffalo's team not going to be making any moves. But I think when comes to the Dolphins, the Jets, and the Patriots, these are teams that may be teams that are opened up. So on those teams that are maybe, those are the teams that I went through and looked at the players on their roster that might present themselves to being somewhat attractive to the Seahawks on a trade deadline deal. What we're doing here is kind of positing that their season goes wrong. So they get to trade deadline, they're 2-4 or whatever, they're 1-5. Maybe they're not. That team's not going to be that bad. It's always hard to predict. There's always going to be some of these teams that land in that place. So I took that collection of teams that I thought would be potentially in play as far as having bad years and then being open to make trade deadline deals. All like the Saints, for instance. Then looking at those players going into the final year of that deal, it may not be as certain then that those teams want to sign that player to that contract extension. Maybe because the player hasn't fully proven himself. Maybe it's just because, like with the Saints, they find themselves in kind of cap hell every year, and they don't have quite the space there to sign those guys. So here is my list of guys that could become available here as a possibility, as a strong possibility, in fact. And that these are guys down the line that we can maybe kind of keep a side eye on. Just keep a side eye on these guys and their situations with what's going on down there. First off, Trayvon Diggs with the Dallas Cowboys, cornerback there, signed a pretty big contract recently there. But if you were to now sign Micah Parsons to a big old contract extension, is there a way maybe now you're looking to kind of peel some of the money off the books to afford that deal? And in Trayvon Diggs, maybe that could be the case. Seahawks maybe be in a position at that point to need a cornerback midseason deadline, looking to upgrade the position. That's one that could make a lot of sense. And in looking over at the contract there with Trayvon Diggs. Again, he did sign this in 2023, essentially that extension, and it does continue to run through. But if they absolutely had to and they wanted to, there could be a deal to be made. Again, understanding that they're looking for the future on that one to kind of get out from under the books of that, to set their cap in a good situation after they're essentially signing kind of a record-breaking deal to Micah Parsons. So just looking for maybe one domino to fall off the other one, where you got to pay here, you got to pull from somewhere else a little bit. And I get that impression sometimes with the Cowboys because they just don't always seem to feel like a team that spends the money in the same way others do. They're nowhere near the vicinity, for instance, of like the Eagles with the void year contracts. They don't do void year contracts. So you got to kind of pay all the prices up front from the Cowboys' perspective on this because they don't really bury the money. Jerry just doesn't believe in it. I won't bury money. I won't pay now. I won't pay true. I won't pay right. Zach Allen is another guy to take a look at. The Seattle Seahawks were looking to sign both Draymond Jones and Zach Allen a couple of years ago when both were free agents on the open market. The Denver Broncos ended up outpaying us for Zach Allen. He's been the better player between Draymond Jones and him. He is going into a contract year this year. As I said, I think with the Broncos, there's a lot of potential here for this team to maybe take a step back this year, 6-7 wins, come to the trade deadline, find that they're going to start to offload a couple of assets they have. In Zach, you've got a free agent after the year. Get something for him now. Seattle, I think he'd give you a little redundancy, but I know it's a guy that the team really likes a lot. So just a guy to keep an eye on because of how interested they were prior and how good he's been with the Broncos. Courtland Sutton, if you need some help at the X outside wide receiver position as you get into the year, there's not a lot of wide receivers out there that I think are going to be available around the trade deadline this year when you look at the teams and the landscape of those that are out there. But he's one guy that's been bandied about here in recent years as a possibility. Wyatt Teller, guy that's been talked about out there with the Cleveland Browns. I don't think you would make this trade at this point. Cleveland seems like they're going to kind of just hold on to him, but it's hard to also say with this because they do have a little bit of a three stack there, and somebody's going to be sitting on the bench who's going to be unhappy in Cleveland, and hard to say on how that'll roll with it. So Wyatt Teller, a guy that I know he dirtied up Uchenna Nwosu and basically knocked his whole season out last year, so you probably have to sign Uchenna up on this one too if you make the trade for him. But if you're not feeling good about your right guard situation getting into training camp, maybe a move you make a little bit like the Connor Williams thing last year where you signed Connor, but you realized after you got in camp that the center position wasn't quite in good enough shape. You wanted to upgrade it. So you went out there and you made the upgrade. Ethan Posick, Cleveland Browns center, I believe, again, going into the final year of his deal there. He's been very steady for Cleveland as a center. You have familiarity with him going back to him being drafted. He's got familiarity with Seattle. Could be a move you look to make if your center situation doesn't settle down as well. It's a little bit like an extension of the right guard problem there where you just don't know if the waters are going to be quite right there. Maybe you can find some steadiness there out there if Cleveland's looking to move. Quentin Nelson heading into, I believe, I don't think he's going to the final year, might be the final 2 years of his deal there. But in the Colts, this is a team that is really, I think, in a bit of a make or break state of things as we head into this year. Quentin Nelson is signed through 2026, so he has 2 years left on his deal. He's got a $16 million base salary in 2026 from Cleveland, from the Colts perspective. That might prove to be a little bit expensive. Maybe a place for them where they're not quite willing to go there for him. He has had a bit of a career resurgence in recent years. Colts do have a good amount of cap space. moving into future seasons. He's a guy that has been, of course, a channel favorite here for quite a bit of time period, but a guy that if the Colts do find themselves kind of falling off this upcoming year and Richardson can't tap into his talent and he has another underwhelming year and they don't get the edge rushers developing like Latu, who was kind of quiet last year, okay, maybe now you're looking to offload at the trade deadline. Quinn Nelson is a guy that definitely would be a very interesting kind of player if you don't have Zabel rocking and rolling. If Zabel has to go get kicked into center and you have a need for a left guard, that could make some sense. Trades for offensive linemen midseason don't happen very often, so probably pretty low the potentiality of any of these three offensive linemen, but you never know, and especially if the team goes bad on that side of it with either Cleveland or Indianapolis in this case. Grover Stewart, another guy we've talked about here on the channel quite a bit here and there as a possibility, and a guy you sort of side-eye. He's kind of a lighter, one-tech nose tackle, so I get asked a lot about who's a nose tackle out there that could make some sense. Who's somebody out there that they could go out there and they could find. And the answer I always keep saying is there's nobody out there. And there's nobody out there that you can really go and trade for. But in Grover, he's been a very consistent player, really, really good against the run, run-stopping nose tackle. You bring him in, this guy would completely free up Byron Murphy if you can find a way to pull that deal off. Signed an extension somewhat recently with Indianapolis, but I think that they would potentially be open to this if they're dipping down. I think they're going to be in a little bit more of a sell mode at that point, especially understanding that Richardson's not going to be the guy and that they're probably going to have to be back looking for another quarterback after this year if he's unable to take flight. Alontae Taylor, how about some cornerbacks here? 3 cornerbacks in a row on this one. Alontae Taylor with the Saints. Saints, as always, not in good cap space moving into the future. Alontae Taylor is going to be coming up for a contract extension. Fairly consistent player. Could be an improvement for you out there as an outside cornerback that you trade for. The cost, I don't know if it'd be great. Tyreek Stevenson with the Chicago Bears. I think they just rewarded Kyler Gordon. They've got the other kid out there that they're rolling with too as well. He may be a bit of the odd man out. Of course, Tyreek Stevenson had the situation last year on the Hail Mary where he's turned to the crowd and he's egging the crowd on as they're in the midst of having a Hail Mary completed on him. Not the greatest of looks for a guy with that there. But a guy that could be a helpful corner to you. He's been a solid player. He's not been not been a good player, but been just somewhat solid in what he brings as an outside corner to the team. Greg Newsome also heading into a contract year there with the Cleveland Browns. They're already paying Denzel Ward. This is a guy that if you're in that losing kind of ill midseason, I think could make some sense as a guy that you could go make a move for, help you out. Good outside corner. All 3 of these guys are kind of in a similar place for me where they just give you some solid play. They're not going to be difference makers. They're not going to set the world on fire, but they can give you some solid play, some passable play, especially if your other cornerback isn't making it happen. And there's a little bit of a struggle there. The last guy that I was able to locate and find on this one is Garrett Wilson with the Jets. He's does have the 5th-year option activated, does have a couple years there, but Garrett did request a trade earlier I think at the end of the season last season. He's got Justin Fields in there as his quarterback. It's a guy that's got an eye, I'm sure, towards, hey, I'd like to go get my contract extension. That gets hard to do if we're constantly fluctuating through quarterbacks, constantly fluctuating through offensive coordinators and offensive minds. So does Garrett maybe get to a place where, he's eventually ready to leave town and that you can go find a deal to be made to go get a guy like Garrett, reunite him with his college teammate Jackson Smith and Jigba out of Ohio State? It's going to cost a bit to do that, probably a minimum of a first-round pick if you were to go make that move. But Garrett's a very, very good wide receiver and can't undersell the fact that he's been in a kind of tough environment there with the New York Jets since he's come along out of college. And he's made it work, made it work as much as he could with Rodgers, and especially having Devontae Adams in there, because once Devontae came in there, that was the favored son of Aaron Rodgers as far as the targets go. But Wilson's a hell of a player and a wide receiver now with losing your 2 wide receivers like you have, and if a Cooper Kupp health can't hold up, well, wide receiver becomes a lot more of a needed position as the season goes along, if that's going to turn out to be the case. Otherwise, that or Marquez Valdes-Scantling has got to have a resurgence, or Torrey Horton's got to turn it on and go crazy. But these were the main guys that I was able to find off of looking through these teams that I kind of tried to identify as teams that would be in that trade deadline mode and maybe moving at that time. These are the guys to keep an eye on in their situation, as maybe guys that Seahawks could kind of jump in on if they are going to wait to the trade deadline. And I would wait to the trade deadline because this is not 2012. You're not coming off of going to the Falcons and pushing them up to the brink and feeling like, you're just an edge step away a little bit. This is you still waiting for you to kind of take that full step of 2012 into solidifying yourself in that way to earn your right to kind of make that move that'll take you up over the top. So I think giving yourself to the trade deadline, knowing that there could be some real teams out there that then look to move and some players that aren't there right now that could be available at that time, I think that's where this makes the most sense. With that said, you get the difference maker out there being a Parsons or a Watt that suddenly becomes out there on the market in this way. And I might have a hard time potentially turning that down because I don't know when there's going to be another market opportunity to get a guy like that, number one. And number two, when I do look at this edge group, I like the edge group. I think the edge group is really solid. I think you're going to be able to put a great rotation in there. But is there a guy that offenses have to account for? Is there a guy that offenses have to subscribe a double team to, a chip block, a tight end helping out with? I don't know that there is quite right now as it stands. You can kind of play us straight up as far as our edge group goes. And it'd be, I think, even better and more beneficial to Mike McDonald's defense to have that ability to have an edge that can occasionally draw the double teams and how that could work off of the stacked boxes and the simulated fronts. You know, you're already having a hell of a time with it as it is with changing your protections. Now I got to change my protections and then account to get a double team out to the edge. That's nigh impossible. That's going to create breaks in the offensive line. But you guys let me know what you think. Is there a guy that I maybe wasn't thinking about on this that could become available that you got your eye on, that you think the Seahawks could go and jump in on? Do you feel like maybe Seattle should just stand pat and let the season play out, that they've done the work and that the team is capable and suited and put together? Now it's about the young talent coming forward and showing itself for what it can be, and let that occur and let that happen naturally, organically, and then see where things stand after you're on the other end of it. I certainly could be sold on that. I don't have a hard line stance on this one way or the other, but I would love to hear from you guys and where you guys stand on it. If you can for me, do hit that like button. You know it helps me, helps the channel grow, helps me show up on the old algorithm, and you know I really do appreciate it. I hope everyone's having a great Friday today. We'll see where everybody's at with the chat real quick, and then we'll probably just kind of bounce on in and out a little bit. Solomon says, I think we should focus on paying our own guys. We have some legit studs. It's a great direction to go as well, Solomon. Can't argue against it. You know, you got a lot of guys coming up that are going to be available here to be paid here shortly, just after this season. Woolen, Mafe, Kenneth Walker, Kobe Bryant. You know, do you want to be giving some of these guys some money, not let them walk out the door, reward them? Yeah, I can understand that completely. Mick says, I'd rather spend less and get a clown than a couple of picks and pay top dollar for Watt or Hendrickson. I understand. It's definitely risky with both those two guys, Mick, and that you're giving those guys not just a little bit of money. You're giving guys in their 30s significant money. You're making them like close to the highest paid edges in the sport. And I can understand why that would make a lot of folks nervous to do that. Washington Fist Quest in the house. What's up, man? He is rolling through 43 months. 43 months as a Hawks Nest member. Thank you for being a Pro Bowler, Washington Fist Quest. I really appreciate you for that. He says, I caught one live. Thanks, Brando, for the great content. My pleasure, man. Been having hell of a summer here with you guys doing these daily shows. Love doing this. Really like the opportunity to be able to kind of come in and out every single day like this and having fun with it, man. It's good to see you in the house, brother. And thank you, man, for that long time. Almost you're working your way into four years as a Hawks Nest member. Let's go. Mad respect. Good afternoon. Hope you're having a good one. Dogzilla says, I'd prefer that they concentrate on top skill players in the trenches. Can't argue with that either, man. Well said. All you guys' part on this. Yeah. Start putting a little bit more assets in the trenches. Makes a lot of sense. Washington Fish Quest with the $2 donation says, what's up with the crowns? We've gone feudal. Surf's up. On the knee for the king. Yes, it's something that YouTube's instituted. I think it just gives the chat a little bit of some competitiveness to go back and forth with on. I don't completely understand it all the way, but it seems cool what they're implementing, I suppose, you know, Fish Quest. But yeah, it just got auto turned on one day. Everybody's like, what are these? Addicted, it says, Brandon, any idea on what the cap hit would be for Micah? Yes. So let's get over here to Sports Track. Okay. So we got our top edges in the sport and what they're being paid right now. Bosa at the high water mark here. $34 million on average for Bosa. Myles Garrett, $40 million per average after his new deal. So the beginning point I would say on this one is for the Watt, he's probably 35. Hendrickson's probably in the 35 territory because of their age. I think with Micah Parsons, you're looking more closer to the $40 million per year range of what Garrett got. He's younger than Garrett, younger than Bosa. I think you can make the argument he's been pretty close to in the territory of their productivity. And I certainly think that you're going to have a hard time selling Parsons or Watt on accepting the Josh Hines deal or the Brian Burns deal. So it's 35 and 40 would be my guess there. Michael Calderon says Jaylen Ramsey would make us the best secondary. It's the deal that I've come back to over and over again. And you're going to have to make the sales pitch to Jaylen to get him to play in Seattle, probably, Michael. But what he would do for the secondary, what his addition would do to help this team out, that you're not expecting him to have to be prime Ramsey. He doesn't have to be a lockdown, shutdown, isolate him, travel, blah, 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 blah. He doesn't have to be all that. Just play into the role of the defense, fit to his spot in the secondary. And not only is it, I think, the best secondary in football you'd have put together, but probably the best secondary that Jaylen Ramsey's ever played on. And I like that thought. Addicted says Ramsey and Clowney would be pretty tasty. Not as big a swing as Parsons, but maybe more cap friendly too. Oh, very much more cap friendly at that point, Addicted. Yeah, especially with Parsons going in at like $40 million per year. You're well below that with those two guys, along with not needing to put the extra years of commitment on the deal like you would have to with Parsons. But I like where you're at with that. It's definitely a possibility of a way you could go. That'd be interesting. Alpha sucks at mock drafts. They're almost never right, but we have hope. Yeah, I put JJ Watt on the deal. That's my bad. What's up, Gabby? How you doing? It's good to see you in the chat. James Watson, I'd rather get Watt. Watt's fun. Martin says, what would getting Jaylen Ramsey cost the Hawks in terms of the trade? I would be for it. Only question is, how long would we have left at the top level given his age? I think that what you're doing, if you're doing this move, is you're doing it for a 2-year perspective situation. So as we look at the deal here for, I can figure find it. If I can find it. There it is. Okay. So when you look at the Jaylen Ramsey deal on this, he is signed through 26, 27, and 28. So theoretically, you can keep him for 3 years on this trade after you make the move for him. First year of the deal is going to be in 25 right there. Is going to be, so you're at $5 million there. You got $9 million. So you're about, let's call it about $10 million for the first year cap hit that he would cost. Then the next year's cap hit would be 17. And then the third year cap hit would be 21. 21-ish, 20-ish. So 3 years into the deal, he gets up to 20 per year. You're maybe not by that point at 27 when he's 33 years old paying him that amount of money. But then you're only then on the hook for the void years left and all that stuff. And that's probably some of this that makes this tough. You can see the void years down there at 29, 30, 31. The Dolphins put in there, which doesn't make that contract fun down the line in addition to that. But I think that this would also then neutralize a little bit of the upper end that they can hope to get back for him because he's not super expensive then, but he's not also bargain basement cheap either on the other side of it. So it probably comes down to like a third round valuation. I would say this is what you're probably going to have to give up for him. Probably in that territory. Michael says, I'm not sure I want to swing on an edge. We have some young, hungry players who could break out this year. The only way I would agree is if we're able to package Nwosu in the trade. You're thinking along the lines of exactly what I'm thinking with this. And it's part of where I've been a little bit more open to doing a trade like this, Michael, because it's one that's not going to cost you the pure draft capital stuff with it. Like that's going to be a cost in it, but you're probably packaging one of your edges to include to buff the package up to make it look all that better. And if that's the case, then that makes it a little bit more economical, number one, to get the deal done, because you're offloading, maybe potentially some salary to make it happen and clearing some money off the books, but lowering the cap cost as well as what it would be. I don't have any problem holding on to Hall or Mafe, and I think that there's a strong argument to be made that it's best interest of the team to see them go through this next year and watch that development continue on. It's just these other guys that you can be maybe a little bit more certain difference maker types in what you're getting, a little bit less of, we got to hope this development comes and that what you're getting, especially if it's for a team that can contend this year. Martin says, I don't see us getting TJ Watt. Would it be an expensive deal? It would probably cost you a first round pick and be very expensive at that point. You're going to see a guy getting up in that $40 million territory. Why can't he ask for exactly what Myles Garrett asked for? He's been every bit as productive as Myles Garrett's been. So it's going to be $40 million in a first round pick to go for and get him. I don't think you're going to have to pay much more than the first round pick. And again, back to, can you use a package of your edges? Even if you can't give an edge back in return, which I think the Steelers would want an edge back in return with that first round pick so that they can still have some hope for this upcoming season. Yep, she's over here. What are you going to do? She's already chilling out. You're going to sit in her seat. So that's where it does get a little bit hard on this one to exactly predict cost. But $40 million is what he would cost as far as I think price-wise, Martin. Like that's the floor and what you're gonna have to spend dollar for dollar. But the draft pick compensation is the harder part to predict because of the glut of edges you could put into the deal. It might be Michael Calderon hard for them to get the first and the second for Watt. Keeping in mind with Watt, he's in his 30s. This is a bit the deal, Michael, that the Bengals ran into with Trey Hendrickson. They're wanting a first-round pick for Trey Hendrickson in this past draft. They couldn't even get a first-round pick for him. And you could say Watt's a better player. I'd say Watt has more of an injury worry than Hendrickson's shown recently, which should also factor into this. But given that that's the case, they're only going to get a first. They're not going to get a first and a second. You have to pay the guy $40 million, and this is just the way these contracts work. I was mentioning to Michael, like the DK Metcalf situation. You can find a lot of these examples of players in recent years going to teams that should have gotten more, the teams in draft capital compensation, but because the team that was onboarding him was going to have to spend so much significant resources to retain them, that becomes a factor in the negotiations. Dicted I would still like extending Mafe and Nwosu, but if you can pay a little bit more for a diamond level talent at cornerback or edge, it seems wise too. I think there's an argument to be made on both sides, to your point, Addicted. Yeah. Martin says, well, Watt would be at least a first, and maybe see if the Steelers would be interested in a player trade rather than giving up 2 picks. Yeah, that's where we come down to. To me, the straightforward on this one is if you had a TJ Watt come up, Martin, it would be TJ Watt, a first round pick, and Boye Mafe. Kind of something like that is how you would kind of turn this a little bit. HHE, I'd trade Mafe and Hall for TJ. Ooh, HHE going hard with it. All right. Dogzilla, is Quentin Nelson that blogger guy? I don't know if he blogs. I'm not sure on that one. Oh, Phoebe says, I'm sorry, B, but I have beef with Wyatt Teller, so don't need a piece of garbage on our team, please, and thank you. I'm all right with it. I definitely am not banging the drum for Watt, and boy, that's going to be a hard sell on Uchenna Nwosu, isn't it? Robbie Red, Grover Stewart's underrated. He is. He's a hell of a nose tackle in this league, and there's not a lot of really good ones. Jeffrey says, we get Quentin Nelson, we'll have one of the best lines in the league in terms of talent. I'm just not buying it on the Colts too, man. I think the Colts are in for another year where it's going to be like, ugh. And I just have not seen Richardson really coming forward as a player. Maybe he does. Maybe the light comes on this year, but it's been a little bit tough watch of him on tape. My goodness, the accuracy with that guy. Thomas has just got FanFest tickets, so super excited to see how good the rookies and first-year players are. Let's go. Thomas says, getting Nelson would be great, but I keep thinking, is what you're going to do with Zabel? Well, that's a part of my soft prediction with Zabel, and I'm hoping I'm wrong on this, by the way. But just a general feeling I've gotten with Zabel in the situation on this is that I think that Zabel ends up landing in its center when it's all said and done. I don't think that that's where he starts. I think the team's going to try to make it work with him at left guard. But I think we have a lot of a situation that's kind of maybe similar to like a Posick thing where we're trying to play him guard at first and we just come to find centers really where he's best suited. And that's the case. A guy like Nelson becomes very attractive at that point if it plays out through the season that way. But if you're solid with Zabel, Thomas, to your point, if Zabel locks it in early on and he can show he's consistently a performer there, then that definitely would take that trade off the table 100%. Ever still hope Zabel ends up at center calling protections? That's where I think that's eventually where it's going to go. They're going to try to not have it be that, but I think it's just where it eventually goes. Thomas says Chris Olave is one I wouldn't be surprised if Seattle trades for. That's a great name to put out there too, Thomas. That is a possibility as well. Another reunite Jackson Smith with a college teammate thing. You mean Greg Newsom's a dog? He is a dog. The Browns, with them, their cap situation's in a little bit of a precarious situation right now, and they did already pay Denzel Ward, so I could see them definitely looking to maybe move him. HHG says, I don't think we want any more trades with the Jets, B. They got us pretty bad the last time. That's for sure. Randall in the house. What's up, Randall? Good to see you, brother. Thank you for the $5 donation. He says, fun topic. I'd love Hendrickson. We need an elite pass rush. I'd go to a 2+ and pay him. Olave won't cost much with injuries. Big time pass rush makes the elite. I love it, Randall. And you're, as always with this, you're kind of thinking along lines in the same place that I'm sort of thinking at with this. You've got the solid edges out there right now, and you can rotate these guys through, and they're going to give you good play and good all-around play. You got good run defenders, you got some pass rushers, but you definitely don't have anything that's close to elite right now coming off the edge. And you don't have anybody coming off the edge that offenses have to account for, really prepare for. They're going to get their wins, but they're just going to get kind of their wins over the course of the game through the steady flow of the action versus getting guys out there that can maybe be dominant in an area of their game, give you a difference-making level of component in their game. And then what does that do for the defense? What does that do for Mike McDonald in the scheme and freeing him up to creatively make other things kind of open up and, get you concentrating here and then attack you over here? I feel like you've never seen McDonald and his defense being given that and then really having that unless you want to go to like Hutchinson at Michigan when he was there. But I really have come to kind of get enamored by this a little bit, partly because I just haven't really felt like we've seen that final step forward from either Hall or Mafi. They've been good players, but they just haven't taken that step to this place of things. And the guy in Mafi is heading for 27 years old here. He's not necessarily a super young player where you go, well, he came in the league at 21. You got to give him time to. No, he didn't. He came into the league a little bit of an older prospect. And so him coming into a contract year, I do kind of think about this of, you spend $35 million on a Hendrickson now versus you're going to spend $20 million on a Mafe, and maybe Mafe continues to develop. Maybe he continues to get better. But I definitely find myself kind of thinking about, is there a better way to go on this to get a little more of a difference maker there from that side? It could be a little more impactful than what you have. Kind of just an interesting thought. But I can completely, as well there, Randall, be sold on just going with the 4 and running with it, and that those guys, one of them is going to take a step forward and Mafe and Hall this year, and that's all you need at that point. You're good to go. Olave's fun. He's definitely a guy that could be in play as well. That the concussion thing is the worry there, but he could be in play, Randall. And maybe a guy that fits in what they want to do. Love where you're coming from, man. And I agree 100%. Kevin says, I really like the possibility of landing Garrett Wilson, just not totally sold on the wide receiver core as a whole. If you have a legit shot at an elite pass rusher, you go for it. I love both your thoughts on that, Kevin. I agree 100 completely percent with you. I like Garrett Wilson's game quite a bit. Yeah, I always keep an eye on those kind of receivers where they've been in a situation where they're drafted really high, but they've not been really given great offensive scheme, not really been given a great quarterback. I think you saw a guy like Terry McLaurin with Washington going through this in the early part of his year. Look what happened with Terry McLaurin when he finally had a Jaden Daniels to throw to him. Could not a similar situation be happening with a guy like Garrett Wilson if you get him a better environment, a better quarterback, a better team, a better system? I think so. Thomas says, Wilson or Olave would be great. I'll take either, man. Steven, Seattle might be really good on defense this season. I'm excited to see the chess match between McDonald's D versus our opponents. I wonder what he has planned. New wrinkles, schemes, deceptions. Great thing about McDonald is that he's not just bringing in some copy and paste offensive scheme and plays of what he had learned. That's an element to his system, certainly, but He is a guy that's a forerunner. He's a guy that's looking to continue to build upon what is and evolve it and adapt it. And it's not just going to stay stagnant for years to come. And I'm with you. It's going to be really fun to watch how he can learn the talent from last year, build upon that. He said himself, like a guy like Witherspoon, who he absolutely loves. It sort of took him halfway through the year with all that Witherspoon can do to kind of figure out where he wants to exactly kind of put him rather than having him do everything, lock him into some things where he's really elite and really good at it. It's going to be a lot of fun watching him go crazy. And you've given him a hell of a lot of talent. You've taken a defensive coach and you said, hey, defensive coach, we're going to put resources to this side of the ball. We're going to return all 11 of your starters. We're going to return key reserves in addition to that. Jaron Reed, Uchenna Nwosu. We're going to go draft a hyper-talented safety that you're going to be able to use all over the place. We're going to bring in DeMarcus Lawrence to help you solidify your run defense. You've done a good job from a general manager standpoint to lean into that coach and lean into what he wants to do and how he wants to win football games. It should work. Deron Jay says, if you can get Parsons, you get and you pay Parsons. Very well could pop up, man. I'm just saying, could pop up. Jonas Doyle, Clowney and Hendrickson would be very Kearney and Peterson-esque, Julian Peterson-esque. Yes, sir, it would. I love that comp. Man. Yeah, kind of very similar in how you could set the stage with those two guys. And, go get a Hendrickson and you flip an edge. And, what if you could do a Hendrickson trade where you move a Hendrickson of like a Derek Hall and a Boye Mafe for Hendrickson, and then you sign a Clowney? To your point, Jonas, I like what you're thinking, man. Very creative. Very creative. Thomas says, I love Jake and their fans drinking the Kool-Aid thinking they are the best in the NFC West when it took a strength of schedule tiebreaker to win the division and Eagle game changes anything. Yeah, Jake was definitely getting drugged a little bit over the last couple of days. Doc's posted a clip from the round table that went a little viral. Hawk fans were raking Jake. It's the nature of the beast, though, If you're going to go that hard, it's as a homer, you're going to get blowback. Seth says Clowney's the only edge I'd be open to getting. That wouldn't cost too much. No, he'd be pretty cheap, especially considering these other guys and what they would cost. Draft pick, compensation, just pure cost. Evan, a few months ago, I asked you tips on sports content creation. Although I'm not making videos since then, I've started writing articles for the sporting news about the Seahawks. Your advice really helped. Well, thank you for that, Evan. I appreciate that. I'm glad to hear you found some footing there and you're rolling. So that's great to hear, man. And yeah, reach out anytime if you got any questions on doing that stuff. But that's awesome to hear, man. Congratulations. It's just start out, get your feet dipped into the pool, and then just slowly immerse yourself in like it's the cold waters, and you just got to adjust your body to it. That's all you got to do with it. But congrats, man. That's awesome. Hell yeah. Jonas, we probably pass on Ramsey or Parsons. Not enough of a gain to get Jaylen at this point, but if he's cheap and not selfish, I'd be okay with it. Parsons, on the other hand, or even Watt, no. Parsons and Watt both are either one neuter, Hall or Mafe, or the depth. Clowney, Oppo of Lawrence would be nice. Hendrickson, Leo Williams, Murphy, Reed would be wild. That would be wild, man. It would be wild. And I think valid points all the way around there, Jonas. I think the thing with it, Jonas, is that you'd have to probably move I see you saying move Nwosu instead. And so the way that this would work on this, just being realistic, is that if you're going to go make the move for one of the guys on the market, Hendrickson, Parsons, Watt, if they are available, you're going to have to give up one of Mafe or Hall. Uchenna's not going to have any trade value right now if you try to move him. There's no team that's going to be like, oh, we're getting Nwosu. We'll lower the cost. It's going to be one of those other two guys you'll have to kind of pick from if you make the move on that. Thomas says, my problem is Seattle Parsons, Watt, Hendrickson away from being a contender. Until the offense is good, it's doubtful. I think that's a fair outlook on it, Thomas. And part of the reason why I would lean a little bit more into waiting to the trade deadline to learn who you are as a team before you make that move, to get a little bit more solidity that you know where you stand and that you're not sort of hoping and guessing a little bit there. But some of that could be a little bit too. If John's in my ear on this one, he might say, well, yeah, but you're not going to have these players available to you at the trade deadline. And that's where that can make it a little bit sticky if there's a deal to be had. Shadowbot, go Hawks, man. HHG. Cowherd did a complete 180 on Sanders. Colin Cowherd doing 180? What? Huh? Phoebe says, now people are praising Sanders for doing what he was supposed to do when you pull over someone, which means corroborate. Thomas, I want to see wait and see on McDonald's scouting defensively. Him and AD could change the edge group. They could, yeah. I'm okay with that. Jonas says, I want a full diaper from the San Francisco O-line after the first series against our D-line. Just brown marks just beneath their ass across the board. They all squat down their stance, and the shots there, they do the sky view shot behind the quarterback's back, and you just see little brown spots across the whole line there. I love it, Jonas. Let's go. Let's go. Did all the offensive linemen shut themselves, Bill? I think you're seeing that right, Bob. That kind of shade of brown is no longer on NFL turfs anymore. Not anymore since we're playing in a artificial turf here. There's no brown to be had on that turf, if you know what I'm saying. I do, Bill. So why would they all crap themselves? Well, have you seen that Seahawks defensive line? What position is Nwosu again? He's an edge. HEG Sanders got 2 speeding tickets in 1 month, paying for the Browns to make him do that. Maybe he's trying to find his way out of town. This is why he forces himself out of town. He never wanted to go to Cleveland, and this is the way he avoids it. What's up, Steven? Yeah, he's an edge, HH. Thomas says, I want to do something with my son about a Hawks in video. My son is pretty knowledgeable, and we each debate about what Seattle should do. One of my favorites is the Geno debate. It's going to be a timeless one there. You should, man. The kid vids always do well. Bubbo is my religion. I don't see a world where the Rams and Niners combine for more than 11 wins. Combine? Bobo coming hard with it. I don't know, Bobo. I mean, that 49ers schedule is the easiest in football by a metric crap ton. It's like not even in the vicinity of where the second place team is at as far as easiness goes. But look, they're winding down. That's for sure, Bobo. Both those teams are a little bit aged in spots. And when you have age in football, the one thing we know about is they can catch up to you really quickly. You can be right here and rolling and everything looks great. And then the age suddenly hits you and you drop off a cliff. It definitely can happen. Shadows has finally got Wi-Fi at the new apartment. Went like 2 weeks without. I'd go crazy without having internet for 2 weeks. You must have been getting into some meditations and stuff to be able to deal with that. Oh, hopefully at least add some TV or something. That'd be brutal. Robbie Red, thank you for the $1 donation. Robbie Red, man. Go Hawks, brother. I appreciate the support. Thank you so much, man. Didn't have a note in there, just the don't know. Thank you. Thomas says, if Seattle blows out KC and does well on Green Bay's inter-squad game, then I might be interested. But trading playing when we don't know is the same thing Pete and John did 3 years ago. Fair enough. I wouldn't push back against any of this in the least. In that, I think that's a very understandable, logical, reasonable approach. You went after Jamal Adams, and you did so because at this time of year, and it didn't pay off. In that. So I can get it on that one. I think that there's been times that it's worked out as well on the other side of it. I think Sheldon Richardson came in for a 3rd round pick at the start of training camp, and he gave you solid play through that year. You didn't get him on an extension, but it was a 3rd round pick, so the cost wasn't great. You brought in Jadeveon Clowney that 1 year, and you were able to get the Texans to eat half of his franchise cost that season, franchise tag cost, and it cost you a late 3rd round pick there as well. I think the value was good on those 2 deals as training camp deals go. When it comes to the Jamal Adams thing, I think the one thing that would differentiate this one to me from the Jamal deal was that you went out and you got Jamal Adams because of the fact that you had not done enough in the offseason to buff up your pass rush to make it somewhat even legitimate. And you were bringing in Jamal essentially to try to clean up your pass rush issues and give you a starting safety for the future. Whereas this is more about getting a guy in now that does this fit from this scheme going to that scheme? Or we gotta have a safety be our best pass rusher. This would be more about you getting a legitimate edge that you absolutely knows fits to your defense. And it'd be a little bit, to me, different situation from the Jamal deal. But I understand completely the hesitancy here and wanting to first see the team, Thomas, and what they are in actuality and where they are in actuality, rather than take that kind of risk, because it is a risk. Thomas says, I almost lost it when Jake put the Rams secondary ahead of Seattle. You saw in my reaction too, I was pretty blown away on that one. I know Jake can lean a little bit into his homerism to a degree, but that one caught me off guard too. I was like, what? Your number one corner was cast off of both the Niners and the Seahawks organization. Is there not something in that? He talks about Achilleo like he's the shutdown corner of the NFL. It's kind of wild. We don't need Ramsey. We got Achilleo in the house. Jonas says, my question is, if we can get Parsons, how much more is it to get Myles Garrett, respectively? Jonas, I know Myles was asking for a trade earlier this offseason, but he quickly doubled back down into signing a contract extension with the Cleveland Browns. So he re-upped with Cleveland even after he asked for that trade request. So he's going to be with Cleveland for the rest of his career, or most of the rest of his career. Bobo, Kenny Clark at the trade deadline. I'd be open to that, Bobo. Green Bay's got to be out of they got to be out of the flux a little bit, of course. You know, they got to be out of the mix at that point. They've got a pretty good team, but that's a tough division. A division with kind of like the NFC West, where it's like everybody's kind of looking stronger and stronger, and somebody's going to have to fall away. Somebody's going to have to fall back. And maybe it's going to be Green Bay this year. Robbie says, hey, at least Jamal had the record for most sacks as a DB. That's true. That's true. You got something out of it, at least there. Right? I mean, he came in and filled the role of what you needed. You needed pass rush, and he brought the pass rush. You know, so can't argue with that. Thomas, I agree that it works, but my main concern is if the offense is better than last year, I believe it can be, we could be saying it'll be better than the past few years. Yeah. We just don't know yet for sure, Thomas, and that's where I mean, there's anything wrong with, you know, kind of letting it wait and bake a little bit and then see where it stands as you get a little bit more into the season. HHG, I'm making tacos. I got from Costco. I might get me some tacos today. That sounds good. Taco sounds real good. Martin, if we trade for a good player from our roster as part of the deal to get Ramsey or Watt, who would you be okay with us trading? I'd be good with Nwosu being traded. It'd be great if you could move Nwosu because he's not part of the long-term plan here, and you would be able to then retain Mafe and Hall. I think this comes down to, Martin, it's what's ideal for you and then what's ideal for the organization you're trading to. And if you're moving for a Watt or a Ramsey and they want an edge back, I don't think that Nwosu, coming off 2 straight seasons of being very injured at his age, is going to be worth a whole hell of a lot to any team. I think in Boye Mafe and Derek Hall, there are teams that are going to look at those 2 guys and say, these are guys that have been good players, and these are guys with some upside that remains. And that's what those teams are going to then want. You're not going to be able to get away with, like, you know, not moving one of those 2 guys at that point. It'd be great if Jen had a little bit more trade capital. I'm with you guys on it would be ideal to kind of move him and then keep those 2 guys in and let them continue their maturation process to see what their final form can be. And then you can make a determination after the year on those guys. But unfortunately, if you're going to make this move, you're going to have to bite on one of your 2 kind of prime guys to make it go. Bobo says, we're good, LeBron. We have Ben Simmons. Thomas, I doubt Cleveland will trade Myles Garrett. It's more logical with Parsons and Watt. Yeah, no, he's just signed his extension, so it's impossible with Garrett. And it was one of the hilarities of this offseason. You know, I want out of Cleveland. I want to go win. I've been in Loserville here through my whole career. I'm ready to go win. I want to go win. And then Cleveland's like, we'll pay you $40 million a year. I mean, I want to stay in Cleveland. I really want to be. I've always wanted to be in Cleveland. I'm a Brown through and through. Oh, Lordy. Samurai Babyface. Yeah, I need a beard break, man. I had to free up the face a little bit. You got to let it air out every once in a while with age. Phoebe B, did you see the NFL rankings on quarterback? And now all of a sudden Geno's a top 10 corner after 1 month of practice. Does that mean Milroe fixes all the issues in one off season? I suppose so. It has been kind of funny to watch Geno's star rise going to now the Raiders off of where he'd been with Seattle, where for years it was very hard to get him any respect from a national perspective of things over and over again. And now suddenly he goes to Vegas and you start to see that narrative change. It's part of why I say when you hear people talk about quarterbacks and everything, sometimes it's a little bit more reputationally based more than it is really on people who have watched the recent film on guys and really broken down what they bring to the table. I hadn't seen the rankings though yet, but I mean, it makes sense. I can't say I'm surprised. Jonas says, I think our offensive production will mirror the Falcons when they had Duckett, Dunn, Crumpler, and Vic. Can't timber who their coordinator was. Oh, yeah, I know who their coordinator was. Actually, he's a former Seahawks coordinator. Let's see. Wasn't this the guy? Yeah. Okay. So this is the guy that. So it was Greg Knapp. And so Greg Knapp was the offensive coordinator for Vic under Jim Mora. And then Greg Knapp came to Seattle in 2009 as the offensive coordinator. He only lasted 1 year as an offensive coordinator. But then he got hit on his bike. In 2021 was struck by a motorist while riding his bicycle in San Ramon, California. He died of his injuries 5 days later at 58. Old Greg Knapp. Samurai looking sharp. Thank you, Samurai. I'm going to rock it for a bit of time, I think. But that was, I think you're right, Jonas. That's kind of a similar kind of team you're looking to build. And especially that Falcons team, Jonas, to your point, wasn't really built on the wide receivers having to make it happen. They had some passable wide receivers, but like you say, it was the running game. It was Vic using his legs. It was the usage of the tight ends. That's how they kind of leaned in that attack. And it worked. Worked well. Solomon says, you think Pete will take Nwosu? Maybe. I mean, that's the only way you're going to make a move like this is if another team were to find more value in him or know about his value than other teams that are just going to look at the 2 years of injury history there, Solomon, and say, no, he's injury prone. We don't want in on that. Pete would be maybe a guy that you could talk that and get a little bit of value there back for him because of it. But historically speaking, guys with Nwosu coming off the 2 years, there's not a lot to be had there with them. You know, maybe if he comes out in the season and he goes and gets you 4 or 5 sacks off the jump and you get to the trade deadline, maybe then there'd be value with it, but not where it stands right now. Just kind of, it's sort of a stuck situation where he's kind of in. But we saw with Pete even this offseason and bringing Geno in, and I certainly think that there's going to be some other guys there on this team and this squad long term that eventually become Raiders that Pete's going to want to try to bring in. So it's certainly a situation to watch for. And kind of the cool part of Pete going to the Raiders is it gives us a connection to a guy who can maybe value these players a little bit more than other NFL teams, and that maybe we can find some more trade waters to be had because of that. And that's a great idea. I love where you're thinking there, Solomon. Maybe possible. Thomas says Cal Raleigh's hit 2 more home runs. He now has 29 home runs. What a crazy year. What a hell of a year for Cal. Hopefully the Mariners do get aggressive at the trade deadline. I don't know that they will, but you do hate seeing a season like this getting kind of wasted up as they're starting to kind of fall back into earth. And the offense, as it always does every year, eventually catches back up to them. And we seem to be at that stage again here. So hopefully Mariners actually get something done at the trade deadline. Martin says, Garrett, I've always wanted to stay with the Browns. There's 40 million reasons to have that attitude. Yeah. Players are so funny in how they play it, and they love to do this game. They love to use the word respect a lot. I'm going to give my respect. I need to give my respect. And they're just talking about money. That's all it, like, but they have to like kind of hide it, you know, because it's just a bad look to come out and be like, I want my money. It's like, I want to be respected. Sounds better saying it that way. But it was hilarious to me with a guy like Garrett where you're going to get paid anywhere. You get traded, you're going to get paid. But they ended up just kind of blowing him away with the offer, and it really just kind of came down to money. Jonas says Pete will be where all of our aging vets go to thrive. That's right. He'll be the retirement home for all of our aging vets. I love it. Samurai says after his pay cut, I don't know if there's much value in trading Nwosu, especially with DeMarcus's injury concerns. Yeah. Just there's no value on it. You're kind of giving him away for nothing at that point. Not to mention because you have restructured his contract. I think that there's a hearty amount of dead money that you'd have to eat on the books here with Uchenna if you did move him at this point. I believe that is true. Solomon, I want Pete to take KJ off the damn Niners coaching staff and add him to Las Vegas. I know it's not right with KJ being there, is it? It's just it's actually not just not right. It's wrong. It's wrong, and I don't like it. Get him off that Vegas. Get him off the Niners roster. Say nothing if I don't want to eventually see KJ as a defensive coordinator there in San Francisco. No. HHE, I thought Arizona was the NFL retirement home. It historically has been, but maybe Vegas is going to be the new hotness, HHG. Yeah. Thomas, the only thing exciting about Mariners is Cal doing this great. It reminds me of Ken Griffey Jr. Yeah, it's awesome he's doing it, and such a fun great catcher. It's cool to have the best catcher in baseball because he's just so well-rounded of a player in addition to that. But he's a good player, man. Hopefully Julio gets hot. Hopefully they can find some moves that they can make. See if we can actually go make a playoff run, you know. Jonas Emawari will pay Nwosu's salary to trade him for number 7. Maybe at some point. Oh, maybe at some point, man. It's possible. Bobo, when we were 6-1 before the deadline, the Hawks should go after a superstar to put us over the top, like 2 firsts to go after a superstar, a deal that can't be refused. That'd be exciting, Bobo. You're already 6-1 to start out, and then you go make some franchise-defining trade mid-season. I mean, you talk about hitting the excitement button for the 12s at that point. I mean, you're pounding that thing. I'm open to it for sure. 6-1, man. You got me dreaming here. Martin, I don't buy the story that the Rams were really good last year. They won more than their fair share of games they should have lost. Seahawks and Bills to name 2. We essentially handed them the win. Yeah, I think that last year they were good and they played well, but I think that there's the thinking here that they're a Super Bowl contender based on pushing the Eagles to where they pushed them in the playoffs. I think that's a little bit of a simplistic mindset on this one. I think that they are going to be solid. I think they're top heavy there, Martin, and we'll see with Stafford with where he's at and how much football he's played and his injury history, if he's going to be able to make it through another full season. You know, there was times last year I felt like he was kind of showing signs of winding down as the year went along, and he kind of found that last little bit of steam at the end of the year to perform really well. But quarterbacks can fall off a cliff too, man. You know, everybody, the Brady thing and the Manning thing gets everybody thinking these guys are going to play to their 40, 41 years old. And it's like some guys hit that cliff, and injuries can oftentimes be the precursor. It's not losing the arm strength or the mental abilities. It's that your body just can't hold up as much anymore. Steve says, I also don't think the Rams are the best in every position group. I don't either. And especially when it comes to their defense, whether Jake wants to make the argument or not about the secondary, the safety position, inside linebackers, you know, your defensive line is basically what you got on the defense. And your safeties are okay. They're fine. Your corners are below average. Your inside linebackers are below average. I think there's going to be a real big struggle there. They're going to try to rock Troy Reeder as their starter once again. No, it's not the greatest situations defensively there for the Rams. They're going to be leaning on that offense to carry the day for them, much like we're going to lean on the defense for us to carry the day for us. Jay Melfair, Jake was a ridiculous homer, worse than the worst Yankees fan in their worst year. He's also a Yankees fan, Melfair. It's funny you say that. I also think the Rams are, Jake really believes the Rams have the best secondary. He does. It blew me away too. You saw blew Jesse away, blew Mike away. This is also a division that has pretty good secondaries in the other 3 teams. Cardinals got a good secondary. The Niners have a pretty good secondary as far as at least the corners go. But, Jake's all in on that Rams team this year. He's gonna say they're going to go to the Super Bowl when we do our predictions and all that other stuff. So we'll see, man. We'll see. Jonas, I don't really like Grubb, but there were a few moments last season when if they had pulled it off as a drawn up, they would have forged a totally different outcome and perspective. Very glad we had Cubes. Yeah, I think you saw things in Grubb that, though it ended up being kind of a failure on that, to your point, Jonas, there were the spots that were the bright spots in there where you could see some of what he was doing, which could have worked. I think it's just the detriments in his game, specifically the thing that I've come to is that he was a guy that was really trying to go after mismatches rather than attacking coverages inherently, and that's gonna be hard to call a game that way. You can do that in college. I don't think you can do that in the pros. But there were some things that he built on that were good and that were cool. Things that I'd love to carry over this year. The gap-based stuff, the tunnel screens, the lateral plays. There's some cool stuff that he was doing there, but just there wasn't enough consistency within the cool stuff. For me, I would say the Rams might be on the come down, but then I remember the Falcons gave them a first-round pick. Gosh, I hate when the Falcons did that. We had them on their backs. Falcons we almost had them on our backs. Yeah, Falcons gave them an out, man. HG, why are all the LA fans outside of LA? I don't know. Because LA doesn't have a lot of LA fans in it. Everybody's moved to LA from outside. But was it Jake names a lot of nobodies on the Rams and acts like it means something? I used to do the same years ago for guys like Radigan, but now we're actually have good players worth mentioning. He did. He just kind of went down the roster. He starts getting down to the fifth guy. You're like, really? If you got to get down to your fifth guy in the cornerback room, you're making the argument probably a little too strong. He said Jake must think it's only a fluke if the Rams lose and actually expects them to win every game by double digits. He's feeling himself on it. And I'll give him some credit. I mean, look, they've been to the playoffs a couple times the last few years. They played Detroit really well on the road and had them right on the brink. And last year had the Eagles on the brink. I mean, he's got some reason to feel confident. I think we all kind of believe there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors element to what the Rams have done the past couple of years to get that done. But you got reason to believe that in that confidence too for how your team's performed. Can't deny that. JFL Melfer, I'd be fine trading Uchenna, fan or running back. Yeah, I'd be open to all those guys. I don't think you're getting much off Uchenna or Fant at this point, but you never know. You never know. Thomas, I understand Jake's excitement, but Seattle lost the Rams in overtime, and if EJ's caught the ball, the Rams probably would have been swept. The Bills win, and Seattle lost to the Giants. Things worked out well in their favor. Niners having the injuries they did last year too, Thomas. Cardinals not really coming really far forward. It helped them out on that. We'll see if they get the same benefit this year. Jay Melfair, that is actually being a Brown through and through. what Garrett did. Yeah, kind of. It kind of is. It does fit the type, doesn't it? Steve says they were a ball off of McBride's helmet away from missing the playoffs. True. Yeah. Ball that he catches all the time usually. And for some reason, when he gets down to the red zone, McBride becomes allergic to touchdowns. But yeah, there's a couple things that broke really nicely in their direction to allow that season to happen for them, Steven. And I don't know if that's those things, they can count those same things to break this way. I think I just come back to with Stafford too, a guy that's played so many years in this league, has played so many football games, has had so many injuries. You look at the past 3 years, they've been in the playoffs every year, extra games in the playoffs, extra hits. That stuff does start to stack up eventually. And I did feel like with at the very least with Stafford last year that you're starting to feel the mobility going down bit by bit. Never was the most mobile guy as it was, but you're starting to feel with him a little bit more of the feet stuck in mud feeling at times with him in the pocket. Thomas, I love that Seattle didn't make the playoffs. You can tell that the players that Seattle is motivated. They do feel very motivated right now, that's for sure. Solomon, they see Saquon in their nightmares. You know they do, man. They see that Eagles team in their nightmares, Solomon. That Eagles team has their number. I mean, that's a horrible matchup for them. They don't want to see any part of the Eagles team into the future. Awful matchup for them. Bubba says, hot take. We would have beat the Bills if our center wasn't throwing moon balls. If the Rams can talk hypothetically beating the Eagles, so can we. Yeah. I mean, we had a couple games too that we slipped outside our grips. I mean, losing the Giants at home. There's a couple games in there that you should have easily had and just kind of slid the wrong direction of it. BB, thank you for the $2 donation. Like when Debo missed a wide open pass last season, there's another one where Debo drops a ball right in his hands that makes the difference in that game. They go win that game. We win the division, and it's a whole new flavor from last year, right? Yeah, they had probably about a good half dozen moments from last year where you go, boy, things just kind of broke right in your favor just the right time on that one, and you were able to slide your way through there. It certainly doesn't speak to them being dominant, like they just ran roughshod over the rest of everybody else. They kind of slid their way into the spot. Steve says, hot take, Stafford retires mid-game this season. I could see it, especially if he gets a bad back injury. That back's been an issue for him in the past. And if that pops back up again, this is absolutely one where I'm looking at as possibly being the final year of Stafford. I know he signed a 2-year deal essentially this offseason, but if this ended up being the last season for him, it wouldn't completely shock me. I like it, Steve. I hope you're right. Jason, does K9 have a LaDainian Tomlinson type MVP season in this new wide zone scheme? I don't think he's quite LaDainian Tomlinson, Jonas. I think when it comes to the one key difference between the two, I think that they are definitely equivalently sudden and fast, and the jump cuts, just the cutting ability, I think is there. I think LaDainian's got Kenneth beat in two real main areas. One is vision. I think part of what made LaDainian work really well was the vision that he could implement. I think with Kenneth Walker, the vision comes and goes with him at times. I think also getting off of tackles and getting out of tackles when guys have you in their grip. I don't think LaDainian was a pure tackle breaker, but I think he was a little bit more stronger at breaking through tackles at times, whereas Kenneth can sometimes, if you get a hand on him, sometimes getting a hand on him is really hard because he's just so lightning quick. But if you get a hand on him, you can kind of drag him to the ground a little bit. Where with LaDainian, it took you to really secure him to get him down. But can he go out and get you a 1,500 yard season and be a top end back this year right now? Because, I mean, LaDainian's in one of the all-time running backs. He's probably a top 5, top 6 back all time. So not being that isn't necessarily any great shade at Kenneth Walker. And he certainly is fully capable of going out there and giving you a top end season. And I'm expecting him to. He was one of my breakout players. Jonas, he was one of my breakout players for this season. I'm expecting 1,500, 1,600 total yards. I'm expecting 13 touchdowns. He's in a contract year. HA, should we be worried Sam will be Jet Sam? No. He was a rookie quarterback coming onto a Jets team that's failed a lot of other quarterbacks, HHG. So that's been the modus operandi of that organization. And he's performed better since leaving there. He performed better at Carolina and some spot starts there, and he performed last year better in Minnesota. You got to give quarterbacks time to grow and get better. They're not what they are when they first walk in the door. A lot of folks cooking in today. Grandizer Brando, hope all is well with you, family, and Pumpkin. While you are pumped for the Seahawks, do you see any weaknesses being attempted to be addressed, or do you see Coach Mike Mack is content right now? Your cornerback room is thin. Your nose tackle room is thin right now. You don't have a lot there. You don't have a lot of depth at inside linebacker. There's still the question on this offensive line coming together. There's some weaknesses on this team, Grandizer. I'm hopeful for it, but you need that stuff to develop, and you need to hope the cornerback room can hold up and that you've got an answer there at nose tackle. But that does kind of remain to be seen a little bit. Martin, I hope to see improvement on the penalty front as well. I don't know if we will. As you know, this has been about a 15-year issue here in Seattle. Part of me wonders if we just don't get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to calls. Because when you're going through multiple coaches now and the issue just continues to persist, kind of gets a little bit wonky. But hopefully that does get cleaned up. Solomon, I do hope the Falcons do good this year too as well. I do not want to see the Rams get a top 5 pick and their future quarterback and just slide from Stafford to the next franchise quarterback like it was nothing. That does not put a smile on my face. Thomas, Rams fans need to realize Stafford was a trade away from being a Raider. So obviously the Rams believe Stafford's almost done. I think they know Father Time's adding up here. And then they know that when the end comes, it's going to come harsh, it's going to come fast, and it is going to be unforgiving. And that's what happens with these quarterbacks. And I think Brady, in a lot of ways, kind of created this false dichotomy of what you can expect of quarterbacks as they age. And much more of the rule of thumb is what we see from guys like Matt Ryan or Drew Brees or Phillip Rivers, that you get to your mid-30s, it's kind of like a little bit like that. Grandizer, fun fact, Brandon Cannon once made a weeping pillow laugh. Yeah, Steve says, I was a different and admired the Rams and McVay, but Jake makes me hate the Rams with a passion. Oh, that's very true. And Bobo, you're right. Niners aren't going to get magically healthier this year. And they lose a couple of injuries at key points. So you lose Trent, you lose Fred Warner. Just you take 2 guys. You can almost kind of play this on any 2 guys at the Niners. Take Trent Williams and DeMondre Lenore. Take George Kittle and Nick Bosa. 2 key injuries at the top level of their roster, and that is a sunk team. That is a team that will end up right back in the back of the division. They need their top end of the roster to remain and stay healthy through the season. And 1-2 injuries in on that, they will be toast. They will be toast. Shadowbot, I can't wait for K9 to go off either, man. I think this is the year we're going to see it. Jonas, if we can get Pete Castlebeck comp for Darnold this season while taking the negative plays the Matt frequently had and replace them with explosive Mill Road downs sprinkled in, that will remind us of Vic on Monday Night Football. Let's go, man. If you can play like Castlebeck, man, you're going to have a hell of a team. We get 05 Hasselbeck play from Darnold. That'll get the job done. That's for sure. HHE hot take, Hawks Falcons championship game. Let's go. Martin says any quarterback who starts his journey with the Jets should get a bonus for just surviving that team and carving out a career in the NFL. 100%. Because it's taken many a quarterbacks and sunk them, Martin, right? It's taken better men and taken the life out of them, So I think you can't hold any of the individual quarterbacks who've come through there them responsible, because that's just an organization, and there are orgs like this that just prove themselves. Cleveland's been about like this a bit of times too, where just can't get right at a certain position for whatever reason, and especially the quarterback position. And that's one that, if you're an organization that doesn't get it right, it's much less likely that it's just that luck caught you bad 4 or 5 times in a row, and it's much more that you're not creating the right conditions for that quarterback to have success. And in the Jets' case, that's absolutely the case. Jay Melfair, everyone forgot that last year the Seahawks were down 6 defensive linemen for 5 games. They're judging the Seahawks on their total numbers, not healthy numbers. Very true. Very true. You had a few 3 games out there with Murphy out with the hammy issue. Leonard Williams, I think, lost a couple games because of a cracked rib. You had Uchenna out all year long. Never really healthy. Good point. HHG Bleacher Report reported Jaylen prefers the West Coast. We're in play, baby. We're in Ramsey play. Getting Alaric Jackson's injury something to monitor? It is. He's got blood clots in his legs. He's had now multiple times of the blood clots in his legs. You're bringing back a quarterback in his mid-30s in Stafford. The left tackle's kind of important. It's kind of, and didn't they just make the signing of like DJ Humphries or something, King Bomber? Which does speak to maybe a little bit of an injury insurance signing there when it comes to Alaric. So, yeah, blood clots are kind of sticky, man. Those things can be tough to deal with when they start to pop up. Thomas, you have a good one, man. Appreciate you, brother. Jim Melver, the Cardinals have a prove-it secondary, but they have more talent than the Rams. They do indeed, yeah. You got Melton out there. You drafted Will Johnson. Garrett Williams is one of the better slot corners in the sport. There's an argument to be made. They've got the best cornerback room in the division. I think you could make the argument for Seahawks and Niners and the Cards. I don't think you can make the argument for the Rams. Jonas Doyle, Ramsey has to wear number 49 if we sign him. Laugh out loud. Bobo, Ramsey right tackle also had double shoulder surgery. Ooh, boy, that's tough too. Interesting. I hadn't heard that. Thanks for the note on that. I didn't know that. Wow. And yeah, we'll see how long he's out for. Another thing too with it, even the Rams right tackle with the shoulder or with the blood clots, is that I think with that thing too, you have to be careful with working out. So it's also like, does this set you back on your ability to prepare your body for the upcoming season too? I mean, that can be another part of this, even if you're able to get through the injuries on these. JML for the Rams are the favorite of the division, but they're very beatable. One bad injury, and they're done. Yep. I feel that way with the Niners and the Rams both in this. You know, if the Rams lose Devontae Adams and Jared Verse is kind of easy, but Devontae Adams and Kobe Turner, I think that team looks way different. If they lose an Alaric Jackson and Puka Nacua, I think that team looks way different. I don't think the same thing's true with our Seattle Seahawks. I don't think I say, well, you lose, Boye Mafe and hell, even an Abraham Lucas, and you can't find a way to kind of get through on that. That you're more of a team that's built up on the supporting parts and the depth than you are on the front line needing to carry everything. And I think that gives you a little bit more of an ability to deal with that if it comes down like that. We're going to trade for both Bosa brothers. Well, you're going to have to talk the 49ers into that one. Steve Holler, Rams are going 20-0. Just ask Jake. Martin, has there been any of the rookies really standing out so far? It's kind of hard to say at this point, Martin. And big part of that just has to do with the fact that you're not in pads. I've heard certainly some good stuff about Elijah Arroyo and how big he is and how uniquely he moves for a guy his size. I think he caught a lot of people's attention at training camp. But that's also the guys that are going to catch your attention when you're running the 7-on-7s and you're throwing on air and cornerbacks can't make plays on the ball. So, it sounds like Jalen Milroe's been a really hard worker. He's putting in the work on it. But other than that, just kind of Arroyo is the only one I think I've really heard much about on that side. Sounds like Nick and Mawaris look pretty good when he's on the field too. But I think it's hard to take much away when you're talking about OTAs and no padded practices. Bobo says, to be honest, if the Niners lose even someone like Renardo Green, they're done. They may not have a fill-in, you're right. I mean, it's Renardo, it's DeMondre Lamore. They've got Trey Brown that they're going to try to trot out there as a starter. I mean, that tells you right there where that cornerback room is at for the Niners. Trey Brown might be eating a lot of starts out there for them. I'm just saying. All right, well, we're going to wrap it up on that note of things. Good almost 2 hours in here today on Friday. I hope everyone's having a good one. If you can, again, for me, please hit that like button. It does help out the channel grow. It gets us put out on the algorithm as people looking for Seahawks searches right at this time of the year, right in the precipice of training camp. They're looking for Seahawks content. You can show them it by hitting that like button and putting me up on that searches so that they can find my content really easily and well. And I really do appreciate it. I'll be coming to training camp here this year, so I'll be there. We got 30th, 31st, and the 1st. I'm looking for somebody to reach out to me if you can for me on DM. If you're a season ticket holder who is not going to this training camp season ticket holder day on the 30th, I believe it is, reach out to me if you can. HeyHawksNest@gmail.com. I need to get a code if I want to go to that practice, so I need your code if you do it. So if there's somebody out there that doesn't have a code they're using and they're not going, I'd really appreciate it. As I'd like to try to go catch that practice if I can, but I will be in town at the end of the month in July, so you can catch me there. I'll be giving you guys some more details about that. I'll be there for the scrimmage game as well at Lumen Field there in early August. So a lot set up and a lot planned with that as we kind of go forward here. We will be keeping through next week, another week of shows next week. Some things lined up on that. And then I think we're going to probably be taking a little bit of a break after next week, after Friday. I'll be doing some shows kind of peppered in a little bit into July. But we're going to go kind of slow into July, leading up into the start of training camp. About like the 14th or 15th or so, we kick back into play and we really start going again. So there will be a little bit of a break here on the channel here after next week, but we're going all the way through next week with a good stack of shows as well. And obviously, if there's any breaking news in early July, we'll be going live and we'll be covering it. So just give you guys kind of a little bit of an indicator on that, on where we're going and what we're going to be doing with it. I do thank you guys for watching today. Tony Wright, you caught me right at the end, man. I hope you're doing well, but you just caught me right here at the end here, 2 hours on in. He says, good afternoon, Brandon. In my opinion, Jaylen Ramsey is overrated as a cornerback. He may be a better player if he moves to safety. Unrestricted free agent Mike Hilton is the best nickel cornerback available. Well, in doing the researches I did on this, Tony Wright, the Miami Dolphins tried to take a guy in Jaylen Ramsey who's played his career on the outside as a cornerback, predominantly on the outside as a cornerback, and they tried to kick him into the slot to take advantage of his tackling ability last year. I think this is a little bit of an extension of what you're intimating about with moving him to the safety position. But I think that he is still an outside corner that can play good outside corner play. We're not looking for prime Jaylen Ramsey if you go trade for Jaylen Ramsey in his prime right now, Tony, right? The question isn't whether or not Jaylen Ramsey is the player he was in his prime. The question on this one would be, is Jaylen Ramsey a significantly better player than what you have in Josh Jobe on the outside? Josh Jobe. So we're not really looking for the slot. We're stacked slot 3 deep on that side of it. We're looking for the outside corner who can be competent and who can be an improvement. Because what you have right now with Witherspoon and with Woolen out there is you have an opening for offenses to go attack Jobe on the outside as that weak link. And Jobe held up relatively well last year, but I do think that Ramsey's a better outside corner than Jobe. And if that's the case, then you're definitely open to making this kind of deal. I don't think he's prime Ramsey, but when you look at the numbers last year, you have to understand, Tony, that Miami tried to kick him into the slot, and he's just not a slot guy. It's not how he plays. Mike Hilton's really fun. If we needed a nickel corner, he'd be an interesting guy to look at, but we're locked there. We got Witherspoon, we got Emawari that's going to back him up and come in as a big nickel sometimes. So we're just kind of locked in there. But you're right, he ain't the same he once was on it, that's for sure. Sean Lee, how you doing? It's good to see you, man. Grandizer, say it. Have a great weekend, Brando. N12, say it. Oh, you know I will. Jay Melfair, cornerback room is excellent, but thin after starters, very top loaded. Yeah, very top loaded. And you can improve a little bit beyond what you have in Jobe. Jobe was fine last year, but Jobe didn't light the world on fire. Had a really good Falcons game, made a nice pick in the Buffalo Bills game. Also had some missed tackles. Also gave up his share of some completions. So, there's definitely some room to potentially upgrade that a little bit. Jobe's functional. He's playable. He can make it work, but, you can improve it a little bit. Grandizer, I think I read where Jaylen Ramsey was suggested to move to safety with Miami because Javon Holland was not going to be retained and Poyer played horrible last year, so Miami was super thin at safety. Yeah, it's probably part of the reason that he wants out of town is they're not. Last year he played at slot. They're talking of trying to move him to safety, and he wants to remain an outside corner. So you can understand why that kind of gets him a little bit pissy with the Dolphins, even after signing a recent contract extension with them. Luke Britt, hey, Brandon, keep up the good content. Thank you, Luke. I really appreciate that, man. Very kind of you to say. I'll keep it rolling, brother. We will keep it rolling for sure on that side of it. All right. We'll put a button on this show with that. Back next week. Got a lineup of shows ready to go. We're going to be looking at what we got going on next week. Let me give you guys a little bit of a tease here for next week's shows. So we're going to be looking Monday, return to the West Coast offense. Some of the principles Clint Kubiak's bringing back into bear. We haven't had really heard this full flavor of it going back to all the way to the Holmgren days. So just a re-indoctrination into the West Coast offense and what that's going to look like. We're going to be looking at Boye Mafe on Tuesday. An elite run defender, a little streaky as a pass rusher. We'll be getting into that on Tuesday. We're going to also go on Wednesday, look at Christian Haynes' rough rookie year. It was a rough rookie year, but there are going to be some signs of life on his tape that I'm going to show you. We'll be getting into that. And then on Thursday and Friday, we got the offensive line and still the questions that do remain on this line and kind of covering some of those. And then on Friday, we got a really fun show to finish us off before we take a little bit of a break. And that's going to be the pathway to a 2025 Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl season. I know the odds are few. I know nobody's counting us to be that kind of team, but I'm going to make the case to you for what it would take and that there is a reality. There's a multiverse reality where your Seattle Seahawks can turn themselves into a contender this year and it can come together. A lot of stuff has to come together. Development has to come forward. Young guys got to start sparkling. But if all that happens, you absolutely could put together a Super Bowl contending team. The talent is there. The powder is dry. You got the means. You now got the coaching. It's all in place. It's just, to me, a matter of time. So we're going to be getting into that on Friday as well. Lock, stock, a lot of shows on point here for you in the next week. Do ride with me on that. We'll be back very soon on that side of it. I thank you for watching today. If you can't hit that like button, please hit that like button for me. It does help show up on the algorithm. And just a couple comments here, just kind of finish this up. Steve Holler says, good job, Brandon. Don't lose any sleep over McDonald getting picked 4th in the division. Didn't mean anything. Oh, I know. It doesn't mean anything to me, and I like us being in the underdog role, Steve. I think that's the best role for a Seahawks team, regardless of era. We're always seemingly at our best when people are kind of counting us out and not thinking about us. I feel like when we get to more front runner spots, that's not where we're as strong as a team, as an area, I guess you could say on that. But no, I know how good he is. He's on the rise, man. And this we got a legit head coach. We got a smart head coach. We got one of the great up-and-coming coaches in this league. And that should in itself get you excited. John Lee, Hendrickson or Ramsey for a trade? I would go with Ramsey. I don't have to give him a new contract extension. The cost is going to be a little bit easier to swallow. I don't have to give up as much in draft pick compensation. Now, Hendrickson gives me a little bit more of a difference-making component than what Ramsey does at this point in his career. But I think the cost is so much more significant to get there, to get that push over the top. And his age just has me scared to be giving him $35 million per year, which is what Erickson's going to want. Laban, adding Ramsey would help the physicality and tackling among the current cornerbacks. Absolutely it would. It's one element that he brings into play where you get the coverage skills, but then you get the tackling in addition to it. It's part of why the Dolphins wanted to move him into the slot or into safety, is to try to maximize that tackling ability. But he doesn't want to tackle like that 24/7. He wants to tackle like an outside corner, and he'll tackle really well in that way. So, yeah, agreed. That's a part that he would bring, and that's a part you could use in the secondary. Because when it comes to both Job and Woolen right now on the outside, you don't exactly have two grade A tacklers out there when they're operating from that position. It's kind of the way it is right now as it stands. All right, well, we will wrap it up on that note. Thank you guys for watching today. Again, hit that like button if you could. Sub on up if you get a chance. We will be back very soon on Monday. 48 hours, we'll be right back with you guys on it. I will be streaming tonight over on Twitch if you want to catch me over there. We're going to be doing some Call of Duty on that side of it. So join me over on Twitch. It's called TheSeahawksNest. If you want to sub up to me over on Twitch, I do a lot of streaming over there on that side of it as well. But we will be back really soon. I thank you guys for watching and really appreciate the great discussion. As always, you guys keep me rolling in the chat, man, with some just great ideas and great thoughts and where you're coming from. And you always make me laugh. But thank you guys for that. I appreciate it. Back very soon. But until next time, mere less than 48 hours away, we're going to be jumping back into it. And man, we are so close to this upcoming season. You better be thinking about the Seahawks team. You better be dreaming big about the Seahawks team, because they might just very well reward you for it. So don't you forget. Don't you ever forget. Don't you damn well ever forget. Go Hawks.